So hello everyone and welcome to this latest TDW podcast. I'm Michael Ingledew. I'm all about making you successful with your technical documentation and technical information strategies. So this week, unless you've been hiding under a rock, we are all here in London and attending the S1000D User Forum, and I've taken the opportunity to speak to some of the key vendors that are here and some of the key messages that I heard. And I'm pleased to say that this week I'm joined by Bob Hogg. I'm making sure I get the pronunciation correct. And Bob is from SDL, and he gave a really interesting presentation this week on Condition-Based Maintenance Plus. Now, if you've never heard of it, it's okay. Neither had I until about 2 or 3 months ago, until I was working with SDL on a few things. But before we get into the actual subject of the podcast, let's, Bob, maybe introduce yourself, give yourself some background, and maybe why SDL are at the show and the kind of stuff that you were hoping to learn, and did you learn at the show?
Great. Well, thank you, Mike. And so my name is Bob Hogg. I'm part of SDL's industry marketing team. I've been with SDL for about a year and a half. My background is pretty varied. I come from both the military and defense background much earlier in my career, and then spent quite a few years in industrial asset maintenance and service management. And Excellent. So this is relatively new space for me, is the technical documentation, but obviously it relates very closely because I've been working with and for users of technology in the maintenance space for quite some time.
Excellent. I think when we actually come on to the subject of the condition-based maintenance, you'll see why your background aligns really nicely to the subject and what the US DoD is trying to achieve. So yes. SDL, for those of us that think of SDL as a translation management company and the software that you have, now you have a wide variety and a portfolio of software.
We do.
So what is it that you're delivering specifically around S1000D, and what the guys can get from SDL if they're looking for support with S1000D?
So SDL provides a broad suite, what we call the Content Publishing Suite, that can address everything from the initial authoring through the management and publication on both an item as well as print and electronic PDF and other output forms for tech pubs.
Okay.
And we provide that to a global audience and have been in a space for well over 30 years.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, I know one of my rules for these podcasts is that we don't name drop because we don't want to upset anybody. So I've asked you not to mention any clients, but I think it's fair to say your viewer is being used by some pretty heavy hitters out there.
Well, thank you. Yes,
So, I mean, if you want to learn more about the viewer, it is actually very robust. And if you weren't at the show, you can contact SDL. I'm sure that they would give you a demonstration of that. Because it's important, because when we come on to talking about the linking of condition-based maintenance to the S1000D, I keep dropping the plus. I have to keep remember to put the plus in. And we talk about how we weave that into the possible technical publications arena, specifically around S1000D, which is where you guys are looking. It really becomes quite powerful. And
it does. And the reason being is that there's a couple of things that are going on. For one, what I found when I started doing some research in this space when I first joined SDL is that there's a significant and very significant labor shortage that's emerging across all industries, but specifically in the service technician industry, and even more specifically in the avionics technicians and some of the related high-tech industries.
And I think what aligns really well for those of you who weren't at the show is there was some major players in the market this week who gave keynote presentations about their concerns about the skills that are leaving the market, and we're not replacing them. And they're having to look now to technology, to how can we maximize the efficiency of our platforms and the people supporting those platforms.
Well, that's exactly right, because what we're seeing is that a lot of those folks that are leaving have what I would call tribal knowledge. So they've developed an expertise, an experience base over time that they've carried into their execution of their duties and their jobs.
Excellent. Yeah.
And that's not captured. And if it is captured, it's captured within the technical documentation. So the technical documentation really represents the institutional knowledge of these weapon systems and asset platforms.
Yeah, when I'm talking to my clients now, I talk about the strategic and tactical advantage of technical information, how you can really leverage it now to get ahead of the competition or be more efficient on missions when you're out there in a more defense-orientated environment. So for those that have not heard of Condition-Based Maintenance Plus, what is it in a nutshell from your side, and how are you weaving S1000D and tech pubs into condition-based maintenance?
Well, the reason I emphasize the plus is because condition-based maintenance is a newer term for a very well-established process around reliability-centered maintenance that we've all known and worked with for many years. And the condition-based maintenance plus aspect is saying that not only do we need to look retrospectively in order to determine the future, as reliability-centered maintenance tends to do, but we also need to include all the aspects and technologies and information that happens in the present. So the real-time information that's being enabled by different technologies such as sensor data and IoT that's emerging into the platforms that we support, and how to take advantage of that information to be able to lower the overall sustainment costs, which can be extremely significant, as well as increase asset availability.
Yeah, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but some numbers you shared with me was the amount the US DoD spends on sustainment is in the billions.
I think 70 billion approximately for 2017.
Yeah, I mean these numbers are not insignificant. These are incredible numbers. And traditionally we look at where can we lose, cut some of the fat off the actual steak here, but. I think what you're doing, which is pretty unique, is looking at where actually tech pubs can actually help drive some of the cost savings in this area.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this conceptually. And if you need to know or want to know more about this, then SDL have done some webinars and they've done some white papers and all sorts in this area. So you can go to their website. I'll put some links below that you can actually go and download some of that. But so how are you actually trying to connect what the DoD is trying to achieve to tech pubs?
So within the technical publications, a lot of the information around the diagnosis as well as the restoration approaches and requirements are captured. And so what we found is that, or what we believe, is that information can be integrated into the maintenance processes at an earlier point so that it's not reactive and being pulled, it's rather being proactive and integrated into the process. So within the technical publications, for instance, in order to do a particular task that you need a certain technician or a number of technicians with certain skills and proficiencies. You know that you need certain types of equipment, and you know that you need certain parts. So by knowing that and by having the ability to integrate and engage the technical publications information through the IEDM with the process data module specifically, we can interact with things such as health monitoring systems, with materials management and parts management systems and maintenance management systems to drive an engagement so that we can take information in, serve up the proper knowledge, and then turn around and send that information out to actually invoke different actions, such as ordering the parts, allocating the tools, and scheduling the technicians for a given task.
Excellent. And you can see why it makes sense, right? Because everyone's talking now about the connected platform. Everyone's talking about
digital threads.
And the IoT. And all of this, I've read stats somewhere that some engines are producing terabytes of data per mission.
Right.
And the power that we have in that data, it's being analyzed much, much quicker. I'm learning about AI right now, and I think the human brain, I was told, works at 30 megahertz a second or something. It can process information at 30 megahertz. An average computer can process information at 30 gigahertz a second.
Yes.
So tasks that were taking man weeks and man months are taking seconds and milliseconds to perform. But what that means is that our products are actually showing early signs of failure.
That's correct.
Well in advance of any human being able to actually notice that something's actually happening. So a sensor will trigger an event and say, look, we're showing an early vibration problem or some performance issue. And this is where you're tapping into that. You're saying,
yes,
let's use that information, let's capture that information, and let's trigger the other stuff that we were doing retrospectively after something failed. Let's get it much earlier in the process.
Right.
Which I think is... if you think about it, is where we're going with our platforms. It's where we're going with our data. It's where we're going with our tech pubs. It has to be. And so now I'm going to talk about how you're actually using that in an S1000D environment. So right earlier on in the podcast, we talked about your viewer, and it's being used by some pretty large organizations out there. But you're leveraging some components of S1000D, and a lot of people actually don't know that this exists within S1000D. So what is it you're actually leveraging within S1000D?
So we're actually leveraging the process data module and the capabilities within it. It has both guided capabilities as well as fully autonomous capabilities, so that it can speak to health monitoring systems. As you mentioned, there may be terabytes of information coming from a single mission off of a weapon system platform. We're not engaging in that, nor will we ever want to. That information is probably going into a data lake somewhere and will become part of that RCM analysis. That's a component of this broader CBM plus strategy.
Sure.
Rather, we're taking the alerts or the triggers coming from a health monitoring system, and rather than sending them to maintenance, we're interceding on behalf of maintenance to say, okay, you have an abnormality. Let's determine with the process data module what that abnormality might mean.
Sure.
And that can be done autonomously through the process data module to speak to the health monitoring system. Or, for instance, it could be brought up to a maintenance operations person in the flight center to say, here's a guided procedure to allow you to maybe further determine what could be going wrong or what could be indicative of this type of an alert. Given that, the process data module can guide them down a decision tree to ultimately arrive at maybe a determination of what the problem is and what the resolution could be.
Excellent.
Now, what that allows us to do is that typically within maintenance and historically, and this goes across industries, is that we've typically had an issue arise and we've dispatched someone who then diagnoses and then determines the restoration. This allows us to kind of flip that paradigm and to get a better diagnostic up front so that we can diagnose before dispatch. And by doing so, we improve the first time fix rate, as well as we lower the MTTR, because the mean time to repair is going to be much shorter if we can start to pre-position the materials and the resources, the people, the tools, to get them staged to respond to the event. Actually, as the event is emerging and possibly before it is a true failure.
And I think that's where what you've just said there makes absolute sense. And I think this is where it aligns nicely with the messaging I give my customers is tech pubs are now an asset that need to be leveraged, and you need to leverage this to your strategic advantage. And if we can leverage industry specifications and their capability, like S1000D, through the process module, and we can then have that interacting with parts management systems and ordering systems and maintenance systems and health management systems, tech pubs can be right at the center of that.
That's correct.
And now a market trend that I'm seeing is that actually more organizations now are taking technical publications very, very seriously because it is part of that strategic operational need for a platform.
Well, when you think about it, there's three things that have to come together in order to accomplish restoration. You have to have the right processes, the right knowledge, and you have to have the right parts and resources. So we've spent historically quite a bit of time and investment in optimization of parts. And we spent quite a bit of money on the optimization around management of resources. But we really haven't filled in that third leg of the stool, which is the knowledge as represented in technical publications.
Sure. And so I mean, I can really see now that, I mean, many people that do understand the process module try to stay away from it because it looks very complex. But if you can actually hone down how you're going to produce it with the help of someone like SDL, they show you how you can produce it, how you can create it, how you can maintain it, but then how you leverage it in something that, like an IETP or an IETM, you can make significant cost savings. Absolutely, yes. There's no question.
And with numbers like 70 billion for the US and I believe 16 plus billion for the MOD, the UK MOD.
So I was just about to move on to that. We segued that actually beautifully. So why am I, a British guy, interested in what Bob and SDL have to say? Is I was at a conference only last week where the MOD were saying, the UK MOD, the UK Ministry of Defence, were talking about how they have to now leverage the IoT, AI, all of these things to help reduce their sustainment costs. And they've set themselves a really aggressive target of saving 1.9 billion in sustainment costs over the next couple of years. So, which is where I think something like this American model, this American initiative with the condition-based maintenance plus is something that the UK MOD should be looking towards and seeing how you guys are coming in there and actually making it happen, actually making it a reality. We can actually make these savings. Yeah. So, and we're not talking insignificant amounts of money. I know that, you know, we can't really compare the US budget to the UK budget, but we're still, for a small island, we are talking a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. When you start talking billions and billions of dollars, and you think about the process overall, any small increment of time savings throughout that process can amount to very significant
over the life of our platforms.
Yes.
So some are in service for 40, 45 years.
Yes.
So like you said, a tiny percentage dot saving at day one over the life cycle of a platform can save significant amounts of money. I talked about this a few years ago at TDW Live, our conference. And we actually did a use case on a platform that had just been retired. And we said, if we can make small savings on day one, look at how many extra platforms we could have purchased.
Right.
You know, and actually the audience were very engaged with that messaging.
Or even cost avoidance. Exactly. Because you think about it, you know, ultimately they're looking at the availability of the platform. And in many cases, they have to buy more of those platforms in order to achieve a given availability state. But if we're able to restore the platforms much faster, then we can improve the availability.
Excellent. So this is why I asked Bob to join me today, because I sat in on his presentation here and I took some photos. I'll put them up over this video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast or through the TDW app, then do please go on over to YouTube and have a look. So, Bob, I just want to say thank you for that. I really enjoyed that, and it's something that I know that you're very passionate about, and I know that you're driving in SDL as well. And if you want to learn more about SDL, I'll put a link down below to their S1000D resources. They have lots of stuff you can go and have a look at. If you want to learn more about the S1000D process module, please do go and speak to the guys at SDL via I think you've got an S1000D expert email address or something.
We do.
Yes. Ask an S1000D expert.
Ask an S1000D expert.
Okay. Again, I'll put that in the show notes so you can get in touch if you want to. I encourage you to at least go and have a look at the S1000D process module and have a look at how it can actually really leverage your technical documentation. So, Bob, again, thanks very much. I really enjoyed that.
Right,
and Safe Trap, you're going back Saturday, is it?
Yes,
you're traveling back,
yes.
And I think Bob was saying that he's got a party he has to go to, but not that kind of party. Yeah. It's a grandchild.
A grandchild.
A grandchild party. So I hope you have a safe trip home.
Oh, great.
And
Thank you.
And I hope you enjoyed this Brexit Britain that we're in. And So I'm Michael Ingledew. I'm all about making you successful with your technical documentation, technical information strategies. I hope you enjoyed that. Give us a like, give us a share. If there's something else you would like to learn, then please get in touch with me and I'll see if I can find another industry expert to come and join me on one of the TDW podcasts. Until the next time, Bob, say goodbye.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.